Hey, and welcome to the Solid Verbal. Now would be a perfect time to consider subscribing. Yeah, that little subscribe button for year-round premium college football content. That's it. Here's the video. Enjoy. Subscribe.
Welcome back to the Solid Verbal, boys and girls. My name is Ty Hildebrandt. That fine gentleman over there, as always, the illustrious Dan Rubenstein. Sir, have you started making preparations to get your face painted as a tiger in a couple weeks?
Yeah, I think I still am going to insist on going the orange standard Bengal tiger look rather than an LSU purple and gold, purple and yellow, whatever look. Like, I think I'm going to go classic with it because I did lose our bet against the spread with regards to the Auburn LSU outcome. And so I will be getting a children's face painting job done on my beautiful moneymaker for our Patreon-only Q&A show during Halloween week. Is that correct?
I believe that is, yeah, that's going to be the...
I think I'm going to look great. The worst part of it is not appearing on video because of LSU's inability to cover the spread with no quarterbacks on the roster. The worst part of it is the phone call that I'm going to have to make to a professional who does not have his or her own studio and that goes to parties. And I'm going to have to figure out the logistics of getting a single adult face painted.
Can you paint my face at 8:30 in the morning in a Target parking lot?
Yeah, that's the problem. So
love it. Well, welcome one, welcome all. Week 5 was a real hoot. We're going to go through that momentarily. This episode, all of our episodes driven by our good friends over at Geico. We've got a number of folks who are watching live on verballers.com and a number of folks at verballers.com who voted in our brand spanking new top 10 poll, which is as follows. Number 1, Ohio State. Number 2, Alabama. Number 3, the Georgia Bulldogs. We will unpack that momentarily. Rounding out the top 5, Michigan and Clemson. And then 6 through 10, where it ever remains spicy, we've got USC, Tennessee, Oklahoma State, Penn State at 9. And welcome to the top 10, Ole Miss, by virtue of your win over Kentucky. Their first appearance in the verballers.com top 10 poll. Why don't we get started where we always start on our weekly recap episodes? We got a bunch of phone calls. Our guy Shay was working deep into the night to put them together into a little segment we like to call the Reverbs. Here's the pulse of college football. I don't know, the college football world, week 5. Have a listen.
After watching that Penn State Northwestern game while pregnant and hearing the word turnover so many times, I had to send my husband to the grocery store to get some apple turnovers. We are...
This is Tristan from Ohio.
Hi, this is Jeffrey the Greek in Minnesota.
Hello, Ty and Dan. This is Tri from Starkville, Mississippi. We always knew that Texas A&M was Mississippi State's ugly twin sister, but we had no idea that you could spend that type of money on plastic surgery and still be that ugly. Hail State.
I'm just sitting here at the end of the night, just reflecting on this loss to Mississippi State, thinking, oh man, maybe we were going to win our clunker. And then just sitting here at the end of the night thinking, maybe we were Mississippi State's clunker all along.
My Razorbacks have managed to break my heart 2 weeks in a row. Go Hogs. Once a Razorback, always a Razorback. But this is brutal.
I, for one, am relieved that my Georgia Bulldogs won a true SEC road test against a SEC East power.
As a Georgia fan, I am incandescently furious about every aspect of that game, except how it ended.
I'm just glad that I'm walking around a Hy-Vee up here in Lincoln because I need all the helpful smiles down every aisle I can get to help me deal with the pain of this Oklahoma game. And, TCU just scored again.
Hey, Dan. Is TCU still the worst team in the Big 12? Dan. Guess you didn't catch the game today. Dan. Go Frogs.
Fight on, oh you Sooners. Fight on to victory. Don't you miss Lincoln Riley.
I think Alabama and Georgia have a looming Kansas problem on the horizon. Gird your loins, traditional powers. Kansas takes no prisoners. They're coming for you.
Iowa State versus Kansas. Matt Campbell versus Lance Leipold. Who will be the lucky winner
of a $7 million a year contract from Nebraska.
It is a beautiful day in the Pacific Northwest, but it is Sloppy Steak Saturday in Happy Valley. Good thing they're selling beers in the Bees right now, because you got to win your clunkers. We are.
The Big Ten West and ACC Coastal are locked in a hold my beer competition for the worst division in college football. And I am here for every ugly second of this downward spiral.
The only thing that went wrong for Wisconsin today was that Brett Bielema woke up. October, baby! 4-1. Let's go Illini. ILL.
Hey, would you look at that? Arizona is 3-2, and they might want to pull the Lee Corso and stop and take a picture in front of the standings, because the next 5 games are Oregon, Washington, USC, Utah, and UCLA. No big deal with that. Thanks, guys.
The moral of this Saturday is, if you gave a huge contract with lots of buyout money to a coach, you may not have made the best decision.
All right, those are your Week 5 reverbs, lively as always. Dan, welcome to October. It was a
Can we still call it Brocktober, even though he's no longer, Brock Purdy is no longer an active? Is there another influential Brock that we can stick it to, or somebody's name who rhymes with Brock? We have to think on it. Is it Lockstober for Mike Loxley? I don't know.
We'll find out. We can talk through all of our possibilities here, as we have now reached the 10th month of the year of our Lord 2022. It was a good week of games. It confirmed some of our suspicions. I think it left us shrugging at others. As the great Dylan from our Verballer Discord pointed out this morning, teams ranked 7th, 10th, 14th, 15th, 16th, 17th, 18th, 20th, 21st, 23rd, and 24th in the AP poll all lost this week. So a fair amount of turnover in the AP Top 25. A lot of clunkers. We had a lot go on. Should we start with the Georgia thing? Like, where's the most logical place to start? I feel like it's Georgia. Because we had a long day of football yesterday, and we didn't really even talk about the Georgia-Missouri game when we did our preview episode last Thursday, because it just seemed kind of in doubt. Georgia was favored by like 4 touchdowns, of course, on the road, but nonetheless, Georgia-Mizzou did not appear on the surface like it should have been a close game. But then you're kind of scrolling through, right? You have all these games going on, so much high-level action, and suddenly you look and see that, wait, Mizzou is leading 16-6 at halftime. And suddenly, if you're looking at your betting app, Georgia's only favored by 5 the rest of the way.
Yeah.
I thought about grabbing it. I'm glad I didn't do it, because this one felt different to me. If you actually went through, and if you did watch most of the first half like I did, this one felt different. And in terms of, clunkerness or whatever terminology we want to apply to it here on the show, this felt different from the Georgia perspective, because they were out of sync offensively. It didn't seem as if they had their act together at all. Perhaps it was now 2 weeks running where this was the case, where an opponent was able to push Georgia a little bit more than expected. And granted, throughout the course of this one, Georgia did assert its will and ended up winning 26-22 on the road. But I don't know, like, are you concerned about Georgia? Is a fair question to ask after 2 weeks of this.
A little bit in that there are elements of this offense and the lack of explosion, the lack of adjustments, the lack of creativity at times, that there is a sleepwalking element to what Georgia can offer on offense. Now, they had an unbelievable game plan against Oregon in week 1, but then there was a little bit of sleepwalking against Kent State and sloppiness. And so that worries me a little bit, that, maybe there is something to Kirby Smart and Todd Monken saying, we're going to limit the playbook and limit what teams can see against opponents that we think we can handle without showing a lot, during the early part of the first half of the season or something like that. Yeah. Obviously, we talked about their more difficult November. But it's worrisome, but then you look at the scheduling. Who is going to be good enough to take advantage, especially away from home? Where are the Georgia road games? Are they in Starkville? I think they're in Starkville, maybe in Lexington. I know they have those 2 teams back-to-back, Kentucky and Mississippi State.
Yeah, Georgia's got a road tilt against Mississippi State and Kentucky back-to-back weeks, middle 2 weeks of November. So
and that's after Tennessee. Yeah,
that's after Tennessee. The schedule throughout the month of November is Tennessee, Mississippi State, Kentucky back-to-back weeks.
I think part of it is just what we saw last year from Georgia with the ascension of the defense, the ascension of Stetson Bennett and the receivers and the running backs that they were able to rotate in and out, that they set a standard that is just kind of impossible to meet week in and week out, especially when all of those guys are gone on defense. And they still have all sorts, Jalen Carter got hurt in this game, and he's a big reason that they have a ton of success that they do up front, the attention that he demands. But look, everybody, this is true of every team. This is true of Clemson, Ohio State, every team that has expectations of being in the playoff most, if not every year, is that we all collectively get these brain lizards because of Nick Saban. That we expect these teams to win by 28 points a week without fail, occasional scares against really good teams. But yeah, of course Georgia should be beating Mizzou by a bajillion points. Mizzou just struggled with Auburn. Mizzou has struggled these past couple of years under Eli Drinkwitz against better teams. But also, we have the brain lizards, and that it's okay to win clunkers even with an incredibly superior roster.
Georgia's offense, as I said, out of sync on the day, 4 of 13 on third downs, 2 turnovers. Mizzou, I think, for their part, did a good job defensively, at least for a while. They brought a lot of pressure. They got to Stetson Bennett.
Yeah.
More than I expected. He took some shots in this game. I came away from this thinking that Georgia's bored.
That could be.
That they're bored. That we're not going to see this against Tennessee.
And they're also going to get everybody. It's the Super Bowl. That's your team, right? The de facto Super Bowl. Every team that has Georgia in their own home stadium is going to play the best game of their lives, even if they lose by 38, right? You're
Correct.
going to get max 110% effort, to use that very standard cliche.
Well, Georgia escapes
Mizzou
by a 26-22 score. As the game wore on, it did feel like Georgia started to get its act together more and more, but I stand by the fact that they're bored, and we're not going to see this against better teams that they truly perceive as, potentially a threat to them. I don't think we'll see this version of Georgia, but I've been wrong many times before.
Yeah, and look, it's the standard by which we're judging Georgia is Georgia from last season. And it's not just the defense. It's the guys that they could depend on in the backfield, the guys out wide who are no longer there, your George Pickens, your Jermaine Burton, obviously, who's playing for Alabama now. And so when you lose that kind of dependability, you week to week have to find and search and whatever for who that next guy is who is going to feel great 23 games into his career, not necessarily 8. That's all.
Let's talk about the Michigan Wolverines, Dan.
Let's.
Yes. Lock of the year.
A little bit scared, though.
Yeah.
20-7 driving deep red zone. Yeah.
I know. 27-14 was the final score. Michigan did win and cover on the road.
Mm-hmm.
I thought for the most part, Michigan played calm, under control. This game was never really in doubt. The cover was in doubt. I was sweating bullets. Naturally, Iowa's got 4th and very short. I don't know if it was 4th and goal towards the latter part of the game. And they throw short of the chains, gave it back to Michigan. Gave it back to Michigan, and that was pretty much the ball game. I had 2 main takeaways from this, and both I think are kind of related to what we said when we previewed this game.
Okay.
The first area of concern coming into this one was, how is J.J. McCarthy going to react to a big road tilt in Iowa City? Tough place to play, good defense against Iowa.
Yeah.
I thought he seemed relatively unfazed. They didn't ask him to do a whole lot. It wasn't like he was bombing it downfield every play. There were a couple shots they took deep. Most of that was, I think, a product of the run game with Blake Corum being really strong. They were able to do some concepts off of that rushing attack that opened up opportunities for him down the field. But by and large, J.J. McCarthy was not put in a position where he had to win this game single-handedly because the rushing attack was working as well as it did.
So, I don't even know if it was being put in a position. It was he made smart decisions about not throwing into the teeth of the Iowa defense, that he sort of kept things in front of him, which, look, the biggest number in this game is the 0 under the interceptions column next to J.J. McCarthy's name.
That's right.
That's the biggest deal here. Now, the fumble issues we can talk about a little bit.
We can talk about, we'll get to that, but I think just from a J.J. McCarthy standpoint, especially after we saw him last week and we talked about him doing some of the Tecmo Super Bowl thing where he runs backwards until he can either make a play or somebody gets open.
Sure.
We didn't see any of that, which was really good. Not a lot of explosion from Michigan, but they didn't have to. They did a really good job staying within themselves, not overextending themselves and minimizing risk. So
no, and it was a big deal that they came out with the scripted plays or whatever on their first drive and got into the end zone, because think about how long and ugly that day is if Iowa gets a stop right out of the gate. Because Iowa did a really good job of keeping Michigan's pretty dynamic offense in front of them, making plays, keeping it to Jake Moody instead of an end zone visit kind of thing. And so I'll make this about me now. If I could go back and make this pick all over again, I wouldn't change a thing, because situationally, even with the unserious disaster that is Iowa football on offense, it is an unserious disaster. And I hope that Paul Christ and Kirk Ferentz meet in a diner like a la Heat, the brilliant Michael Mann movie Heat, once a year, and just be like, we're not changing anything. Hell no. And just like are commiserating as like these old offensive dum-dum goons every year, because that's what, we can get to that game in a little while, but no, there were opportunities for Iowa for sure that Spencer Petras, who, like, good for Joel Klatt and Gus Johnson for sort of dancing around what everybody could see. They're like, he's got a nice arm, but that arm does not lead to completed open throws all the time, almost never to wide receivers. And the number of times where Sam Laporta double teamed and just Petras tries to dump it down. Nope, that doesn't work either. Like, it's tough. It has to be near impossible to call an Iowa game and not be mean about the Iowa offense, to use an extended vocabulary that keeps you diplomatic, because
it has to require such mental and spoken word gymnastics to not just be cruel about it. So much of what Iowa is doing on offense is based on the run, and when they can't run, as they did in this game, it's really a lost cause, especially for Spencer Petras, who is not going to light anybody up going down the field. Now, in fairness, we did see the offense on Iowa's side come to life a little bit late in the game, but they were down 20.
Yeah.
But before that, it was a lot of the frustrating stuff, right? The missed throws that you referenced from Spencer Petras. The offensive line is not good at opening holes for the rushing attack. You mix in some of the penalties along the line, some of the mistakes, and they didn't have any shot here. So it is definitely a mix of personnel with shooting themselves in the foot, with scheme. It's really bad on a number of different levels. And I don't know how you fix that. It's very simplistic to say, well, Kirk Ferentz is a dum-dum and Brian Ferentz is a dum-dum and get the old guard out. We've both said that. I'll say it again. I believe that would help, but I don't think it's as easy as doing just a few quick firings in order to fix this thing.
No.
It's kind of like a systemic deal at this point that would take a while to cycle through the program one way or the other.
Should point out Michigan's good. Michigan's a really good team, we think. Maybe not excellent, but really good. That has a lot of promise on both sides of the ball and swarmed the Iowa offensive line. But on the other hand, if Iowa doesn't really have an impressive offensive line, what is it that you would say you do here, Kirk Ferentz, right? What is it if the offensive line is disappointing and gets overwhelmed by a good defensive line pretty consistently over the course of 4 quarters? What is it that you say that you do here? Right?
I wish you would have told me you were going to make that reference to Office Space. I would have pulled out the quote from the Bobs.
Sorry, it just floated out
get
of
it
the
next
ether.
time.
I'm sure I got the wording wrong. But very strong win for Michigan. First time they win in Kinnick since 2005, I think was the stat. Obviously, they don't play every season as they're cross division. But Blake Corum, heartbeat of this offense, really good. Like the offensive line a lot. Like the defensive front a good deal. And J.J. McCarthy once again. Only compliments, because that could have easily been a game in which Michigan scored 20 points and lost 23-20 on a pick 6 in a short field kind of thing.
No, very, very good win for them on the road. So congrats to Michigan. Let's go to Clemson. You watched this game? How much of this Clemson-NC State game
I watched all
of
it, yeah. I watched some of it live and all of it after the fact.
I enjoyed the hell out of this game.
Yeah.
I sent you a message about it. Maybe more so than any game this weekend. Even though I picked it wrong, I just felt like it was 2 really good teams going at it. And It doesn't mean that everything was high level, right? It was just a hard-fought, very physical game. I'm glad the weather didn't play a factor because some of us might have had the over 43.5.
Yeah.
But no, I thought this was a really good game to watch. And Clemson clearly leaned very heavily on DJU. I thought DJU looked pretty good out there. The stats aren't going to knock you over, but he was just really in command of this offense. Did you notice that they're progressively using him more in the run game?
Oh, yeah. Well, they've consistently used a lot of their quarterbacks in the run game, but especially with the way he's built and the way he can fall forward on 3rd and 4 is getting to the edge. Yeah, absolutely.
And they didn't want to do it as much last year because quarterback depth was not there. But
correct.
This season, I don't know if it's by virtue of having Klubnik behind him or what, but it just seems like they're willing to use him a little bit more in the rushing attack. And I don't know if it stems from the fact that the dude's a load and he's hard to bring down, or that he's actually a decent enough runner when you put him on the move, or the fact that some wide receivers still have a hard time getting open. I don't know what it is schematically that they're seeing, but they are using him. Last night, 14 carries, 2 touchdowns on the ground. NC State even knew it was coming and they couldn't really stop it because just such a big dude, such a tough guy to game plan for. Defensively, Clemson looked good as well. They took away the run, dominated the line of scrimmage, more broadly speaking, and that prevented NC State from getting too much of anything going. I thought a good showing from the Clemson front. I still love Devin Leary. I can't shake. He took some knocks in this game and still was able to deliver the ball accurately and on time. I still think he's a really good player, but it's clear to me after seeing this that what we have assumed for the first couple weeks is in fact true, and that is NC State has a hard time getting up to that next gear on its offense. They're going to beat a fair amount of teams. They're going to clearly go to a bowl, probably win 9 games, maybe more, but as far as getting to the next gear, really elevating their game, maybe winning the conference, I don't think that's happening this year.
So it's a beat-up Clemson defense, which, by the way, came to play and made. So NC State is interesting. I like their players a good deal. I like Devin Leary. I especially like their front 7 on defense, but the defense was done no favors by its own offense. And we sort of used the term pickleball this year. And this is what NC State was last year. When you have to rely on a number of plays, when you have to rely on 9, 10, 11 play drives to get into the end zone, it's more opportunity for college kids to mess up. It's more opportunities for not getting third downs. When you face 11 third downs versus facing 20 third downs, and I don't know how many NC State faced in this game against a good Clemson defense, it's more difficult to have to convert all the time.
Yeah.
And so NC State is limited by its offense, limited by an inability to generate bigger plays. And Clemson, for its part, they don't have a star number 1 receiver. They don't. But guess what they've done? They've used DJU in the running game. They've used Will Shipley in the passing game. They've developed tight ends this year. I think it was Brinningstool, the big guy.
Yep.
God, you can't even say his name without his height, right? He's like, the big 6'6" tight end. Getting up, put that ball up where only he can get it in the red zone. And they do. DJU has done a really good job. I have been impressed by DJU's evolution and the I think the coaching that Brandon Streeter has done, not putting him in a position to NC State was not going to allow a ton downfield, and I guess neither were the Clemson receivers. And they didn't try. They didn't take a ton of shots like they were able to do against Wake and succeed the week before. So I thought it was game planned really well. I thought it was executed pretty well. They go down early. There's no panic to Clemson. And I'm impressed by the Tigers and a little bit disappointed by NC State. And there is a good amount of Dabo revisionism right now, by the way. Where he's like, you guys all doubted DJ. No, everybody wrote him off. You wrote your little stories. Guess who said Cade Klubnik's too good to keep off the field in August? Guess who said Cade Klubnik's going to play? He gives our offense a new dimension with his speed and his accuracy. Yeah, Dabo and Brandon Streeter. Guess who doesn't say things like that? Ryan Day about CJ Stroud. Nick Saban about Bryce Young, right? So a little bit of revisionism. It's okay. It's the Dabo Sweeney way, but good for Clemson for getting that W in a tough spot.
Yeah, I thought a really high level game. Like I said, not everything about the game was high level, but just in general, it was 2 really good teams going at it, and that was fun to watch. Fun to watch.
Definitely.
Let's go to Ole Miss, Kentucky. Woo! How about this one?
Fun. Ugh.
This was another good game.
Will Levis's hands.
Yeah, 22-19, Ole Miss gets the dub. This one, shockingly, went exactly the way we described on Thursday.
Yeah.
It honestly, it went exactly the way we described it. The only variable that we did not see coming, that you never can see coming, was all the Kentucky mistakes.
Mm-hmm.
And if you're a Kentucky fan, that was very frustrating because they had their chances here, right? I mean, 2 fumbles late in the game, both inside the red zone from your star quarterback, is not a great look and not a way you win on the road in the SEC. It did look for a moment as if Kentucky had the go-ahead touchdown with about a minute left, but that was also called back for illegal motion. And then the play after that is when Will Levis fumbled the ball away. In addition to that, Kentucky also botched 2 extra points. They missed a field goal. Again, on the road in the SEC against an undefeated team with good defense and pretty good offense, like, that's just not the formula for success. I did think on the Kentucky side, I don't want to harp on all the negative, getting Christopher Rodriguez back was a nice lift for them. He clearly came back and made an impact in the running game. But it really was a story for me of missed opportunities on the Kentucky side. They were definitely good enough to win this game. It just was they couldn't execute, and Ole Miss played really sound defensively, as they have all year, and especially when it counted most when they were backed up inside their own red zone.
Yeah, I mean, Ole Miss is a good team, and when you play a good team on the road, you can't make errors like fumbles. Like Will Levis had his couple. You can't have the key penalty in the key moment. And I think I came away as good as, was it Quinshon Judkins, the sort of, I guess, freshman star at running back.
Yeah.
We all thought Zach Evans, and obviously it's transfers all over the place for Ole Miss, but I mean, his burst is pretty crazy. I love watching him. Kentucky had the super long, was it a kickoff return?
Yep.
From Barry and Brown. And so they had one of their touchdowns was on like a 14-yard field or 15-yard field. So I came away more impressed with Ole Miss stepping up situationally on defense with some of the playmakers that have emerged for Kentucky. That Ole Miss's defense, losing DJ Durkin, continues to evolve and get better. And they filled in, obviously, gaps in the portal. But really strong performance, from Ole Miss, doing it in a different way, right? Doing it on the ground more than anything, losing running backs, adding running backs, losing Matt Corral, not being like a downfield bombing team with Jackson Dart, who himself, he's picking up tough yards on the ground. So evolving and adjusting, really strong day for Ole Miss.
It is October the 2nd.
Yes.
Here is the remainder of Ole Miss's schedule. They go to Vandy next week. They've got Auburn. They go to LSU, to Texas A&M. Those games don't look as daunting as maybe they did at the start of the year.
No.
They do have a tough stretch throughout the latter half of November with Alabama, Arkansas, and Mississippi State that I believe will test them. But Dan Rubenstein, it is October 2nd. It is 10-2. I don't know about you, but I'm feeling 10-2 for Ole Miss.
Oh, God. I was hopeful that you were going to add in your own voice and say have 10-2 over 22. And it's still great, but I was hopeful.
I'm feeling 10-2 for Ole Miss.
That's pretty good. Wow. Okay. Another double-digit win season. So they have, look, you outlined the schedule. They have winnable games. LSU's offense, Auburn's existence, Texas A&M's offense.
Even Alabama, Mississippi. I mean, I don't know. The sense that I am getting for teams now, I mean, how quickly things change in a week, right? But the sense that I'm getting, just broadly speaking, in college football, is that Ohio State may be untouchable, but Georgia might be a little bit more gettable. Alabama might be a little bit more gettable. I don't know. Like, this could be more interesting than we thought at the start of the year, which is kind of cool.
Yeah, Alabama. I mean, Bryce Young's injuries change. Hopefully he's all right. That changes a little bit of calculus, maybe in the short term with Jalen Milroe, who's just a ridiculous runner. But we'll see what the offense can look like for Alabama. We'll get into that momentarily, I'm sure. But it's also like better teams are going to look at Ole Miss, and better teams than Kentucky, who they themselves are a good team, are going to say, all right, Jackson Dart, beat us.
Yep.
Beat us.
Beat us.
Beat
All
us. Right. Here's 44 guys in the box. Beat us.
Let's go over to TCU 55, Oklahoma 24.
Guess who just got
murdered? Holy crap. Daniel.
Yeah.
Okay. Dylan Gabriel took a scary shot in the head. He had to leave in the second quarter. That clearly had an effect. Davis Bevel, their backup quarterback, the Pitt transfer, came in and wasn't all that great. But even before that, Dan.
Yeah.
Oh boy. The Oklahoma defense, or lack thereof, was clearly a very big story here. This was an all-time leaky roof effort from Ted Roof. Whatever his role is on this Oklahoma defense, they could not contain new look TCU. 668 yards, 55 points. TCU averaged 10.2 yards per play.
Yeah.
Per play. A
bad?
ton of big plays for the Horned Frogs. Sonny Dykes called out as much in his post-game comments. He said, look, big plays are just going to be a part of this offense. That's what we're trying to do. They did it to great avail in this matchup. This was, statistically speaking, one of the most explosive offenses coming into this game. My guess is when the ratings come out tomorrow, Tuesday, whenever we see them, those ratings are only going to improve because TCU looked damn freaking good in this game. Now, it's hard to gauge how good TCU is or how bad Oklahoma's defense is. All right. It's hard to kind of balance those two equations.
Why not both?
But why not both, right? Why not both? Why can't both things be true at the same time?
Yeah.
What do you think?
There's the old announcer cliche, that's a touchdown playing two-hand touch. There were a few of those for TCU. Like, oh, they just didn't touch Max Duggan. They just didn't touch him as he ran down the sideline for 67 yards on that play. TCU is better quicker than I anticipated for sure, because we had this conversation about like, who would you bet 1,000 of your own dollars on not making a bowl from the Big 12 now with Kansas's emergence and winning a bunch of games. And we said TCU just because we hadn't seen them play anybody to that point. And all due respect to SMU also with the first year head coach, but it was, Colorado and Tarleton State or whatever. So we're like, okay, maybe just because they haven't played anybody and it's a first year coach and because of their struggles on defense against real teams last year, maybe it's TCU. I don't think it's TCU.
I don't think it's TCU. No.
Max Duggan, backup quarterback, looked terrific. And Sonny Dykes has made a point of saying how proud he is of the evolution of Max Duggan and the ability to fight after not being named the starter when Chandler Morris was. By the way, Garrett Riley, that's the other talking point, right? The offensive coordinator for TCU, younger brother of Lincoln Riley. A little poetic nature to that.
Man.
And look, the narrative was Brent Venables is going to get this Oklahoma defense figured out and he's going to recruit well. Lincoln Riley recruited good defensive players. He's going to figure it out. He's going to game plan better than Alex Grinch and Mike Stoops or whatever. He's going to be a step up. But Brent Venables has his hand in a lot of different cookie jars within this Oklahoma program. And that's not to say anything bad, but like this is not Brent Venables focusing all of his attention on the Oklahoma defense every second of the week and every second of the game. It's a head coach. It's a little different. So they got a long ways to go, Ty.
Get Ted Roof out of there, man. I'm telling you, get him out. Give him the fake wheel from Lake Low Pop. Get him out of there. Don't let him anywhere near this thing.
There were, I don't know if it was drone shots or blimp shots of what was going on with the Oklahoma defense. Like Max Duggan was made to look like Joe Burrow, right? Max Duggan against this Oklahoma defense where he's just like, yep, these receivers are all American caliber and they're always open and there's always grass to be had. Like it honestly looked like a scout team defense that TCU was playing against. I guess, God, this is so bad, but Oklahoma might put the OU in scout on the scout team defense because that's what they put on the field. And whether or not Nebraska inflated what this Oklahoma team is, who's now on a losing streak within the Big 12, I don't know. But we've got a ways to go, to say the least.
They play Texas next week. Yep. And look, we're not going to talk about the vaunted Texas defense because there is no such thing. Right. But if Quinn Ewers comes back and shows half of what he showed in week 2 against Alabama, this could be another, like, clearly Red River shootout, a lot of points, but this could be another black eye for the Oklahoma defense.
I don't think you need the highest end quarterback as Max Duggan.
Well, maybe not.
Yesterday.
Maybe not. But certainly if Quinn Ewers comes back.
Yeah, but Hudson Card looked really good. Like it doesn't take a Quinn. You could do it with a Hudson. That's all I'm saying.
Oh my gosh. Well, TCU is now 5-0.
Yeah.
TCU's got a big matchup next week against undefeated Kansas. game day is going to the game,
Yes.
which is freaking cool. Congratulations to both these teams. Two really good stories here so far through the early part of the 2022 college football season. And Oklahoma, I think, left reeling a little bit after this. I mean, gosh, this is...
I'd say so.
Not a good showing to give up 668 freaking yards.
Yeah.
What was TCU doing on offense last year? What were they? It's a lot of the same guys.
Yeah.
What were they doing?
Not being coached by Sonny Dykes and Garrett Riley, I guess. Yeah, they were beat up. And look, they have playmakers. They had playmakers last year. They showed out. Like the Oklahoma game, was it Quentin Johnston who had some big catches? Like they had moments. They just weren't stringing them together.
Oh, my gosh.
Good
So
for the Frogs,
good.
man.
TCU heard what I said. All the nice things about Texas Tech.
Yeah.
Trying to bring me back in. Let's talk about the Big 12, shall we?
Let's
talk about that Texas Tech game. Let's talk about K-State knocking off Texas Tech 37-28. Another monster game for new look Adrian Martinez, who had a 57-yard run and then an 18-yard run for a touchdown to start the game. So back-to-back Adrian Martinez to get things rolling for the Wildcats. All told, he had 287 total yards and 4 total touchdowns, 3 of which came on the ground. Deuce Vaughn, also a really nice day on the ground. This is a game that was tied at 20 after 3 quarters before K-State scored 17 straight points in the fourth quarter to put this one out of reach. I thought K-State did a good job trying to affect Donovan Smith, who was sacked 6 times. They definitely did their part here to contain as much of the Texas Tech attack as they could until this thing was out of reach. So really nice win here for K-State. I don't know what we make of K-State at this point. You were higher on them than I was to start the season. I think it's been a bit of an evolution here for sure over the last 2 weeks, beating Oklahoma, beating, I think, a pretty good Texas Tech team. So K-State kind of right back in this thing, Dan.
Yeah, I think so. And I think it comes down to, in this specific case, and this is quarter to quarter, star power. Quarter to quarter, like Adrian Martinez in the third quarter, in the first quarter, or second, whatever, couldn't look pretty disappointing. And then he can rip off ridiculous plays. And there is something about the star power of Adrian Martinez, drive to drive, quarter to quarter, whatever, it comes and goes, and Deuce Vaughn. And I don't love the offensive play calling all the time for Kansas State, but a win is a win is a win. And both of these teams in letdown spots, good for K-State for coming out, after beating Oklahoma, and Texas Tech after beating Texas in overtime like they did, for coming out pretty strong and competitively. Neither team looked flat per se.
No.
But no, it was ultimately that big, we talk about big plays and the explosive plays, generating and stopping, and Kansas State just had that ability more often in big moments yesterday.
Oklahoma State 36, Baylor 25. Baylor got a quick field goal to start this one out. Then Oklahoma answered with a long touchdown drive. They never relinquished the lead from that point forward. They led for the final 50 minutes of this football game. This is another one that I watched most of.
Yep.
And I can tell you the stats don't really tell the story. If you didn't have a chance to watch it, go back, find an abridged version somewhere on YouTube to get the full context for what went on here. Baylor's offense did not get going until late. I thought Oklahoma State did a pretty good job. And there were also a bunch of situations where Baylor needed a big stop and couldn't get off the field. And, the defense had its back to the wall most of the game, which is really a tough way to win against a guy like Spencer Sanders, who, maybe I haven't always been the most respectful towards, but he definitely gives Mike Gundy a dynamic on that offense that's hard to game plan for.
Yeah, and especially going into the Baylor game after, again, the number was 7 interceptions last year in those Baylor games, that it was right to say, he shows it a lot of the time, but in this specific matchup, there is baggage.
There's total baggage, and I just thought, on the whole, he did a pretty good job, right? Again, not eye-popping numbers, but good enough to win.
Yeah.
Baylor was the team that just had lapses. There were lapses on special teams, notably the second half kick return, which went 98 yards for a touchdown.
Couple drops,
the fact that Baylor kept it close for a while, I thought was admirable enough. They're just not a finished product. And that's kind of what I think I've been dancing around here for the first couple weeks of the season. The feeling that they're getting better, but still not 100% of the way there. I think that's kind of my line on Baylor. Oklahoma State is maybe not a top 5 caliber team, but Oklahoma State is much more of a finished product. They played much more of a physical brand of football in this one. And, really nice road victory for them, getting some revenge over Baylor.
Yeah, and not a lot of star power, I would say. And I like Brennan Presley, but not a lot of star power surrounding Spencer Sanders. There is no junkyard Jim Washington, right? There is no, Kendall Hunter or whoever. That there's not a lot of dependable explosion around Spencer Sanders. And he's the dependability of this offense, both on the ground and with his arm. He's able to make plays at the fumble recovery. I came away impressed with Baylor's ability to come into the second half. They were down like 23-3, I want to say, at a certain point, and they came out and were able to generate those bigger plays. And, we had the pickleball accusations earlier with the BYU matchup. Pickleball accusations. But Blake Shapen made plays. Gavin Holmes made plays. It was Monterey. That's my monorail Simpsons. Monterey Baldwin with the deep catch. That was impressive. So Baylor did fight back admirably. I think they were down, one score? It was like 33-25, relatively late.
Yep.
But no, Oklahoma State doing their thing against Baylor wearing maybe the ugliest uniforms of the day. I don't hate all
like
yellow.
A mustard color, and I don't see color that well.
I don't hate all yellow. I root for a team that has worn all yellow. It's the specific, like, Golden's brown, deeply seeded mustard yellow that I'm not into as much.
All right.
That's all.
By the way, I love Richard Reese.
Oh, he's really fun.
He's a downhill runner. He's got a little bit of wiggle. He's really good. If they can continue feeding him the ball, he's going to turn into a hell of a running back. Yeah.
Yeah.
Really good. All right. And 2 final games here to close out the Big 12. Let's talk about the Kansas Jayhawks, Dan. Or as we've come to know and love them here on the show, America's team. 5-0 Kansas, Dan, getting game day next week. Let me cut the music for a second. Iowa State could have won this game.
Yeah.
Iowa State could have won this game. They missed 3 field goals, including one that would have tied it at the very end. Hunter Deckers was fine, but threw a pick in the second quarter that Kansas ended up cashing in for a touchdown. And this has kind of been the story for Iowa State this year, right? Like, the talent's there. I know you're not crazy about the offense. I'm probably more pro Iowa State offense than you. We would definitely both agree that they shoot themselves in the foot too much. And certainly in this game, it came back to bite them, especially in a game like this where they couldn't run worth a lick. And all of the pressure, everything that the offense tried to do had to be Hunter Deckers or bust. And Kansas was good enough here. Kansas was good enough to get the dub. Not a great game for Jalen Daniels. Didn't have to be, right? Just did what they had to do, did not shoot themselves in the foot, took advantage of Iowa State wherever they could, and emerged 5-0, which is honestly the best story in college football in quite some time. So good for Lance Leipold, good for Kansas. I will be rooting for them next week. I want to see this continue. I am nothing if not a romantic here on the college football stage. So
Kansas won a clunker. When was the last time Kansas won a clunker, right?
Yeah.
Kansas's clunkers usually end with a 59-3 final score. And they win this game. They need the missed field goals. That's okay.
Yeah.
You get what you can to get a win, especially if you're Kansas, and 5-0 seems like a foreign combination of numbers in that order. But Iowa State's offense, what was it, 31 carries? If you include sacks, it was 31 carries, just looking at the box score, for 16 yards. That's many carries for not having success. And this is Kansas. Now, I might be disrespecting Kansas's defense, which may be much improved. It certainly seems that way. West Virginia put 40 plus on them, right? Did Duke put 27, 28 points on them? So if Iowa State is unable to generate big plays and they're unable to get creative and evolve and adjust over the course of a season, and I know their offense is specifically built around that sort of dink and dunk, another pickleball team.
Yep.
I don't know if people are confused by the pickleball reference, but that's just, there's like a dink zone when you, like, pickleball is a mini tennis game. And so they are playing mini football, and it can work, and it has worked. But now Iowa State is like more of the hunted, no pun intended with Hunter Deckers. They're more of the hunted, and they don't evolve. They don't change. And they're going to lose games this way. It's just, if you have to make field goals, plural, to win games against Kansas, you are not advancing as a program. Sorry.
Yeah, Iowa State's got K-State next week. They've got a road game against Texas. They still got to play Oklahoma, Oklahoma State, Texas Tech, and TCU.
Yeah.
Got to get that offense together because those are teams that can score.
Yeah. And it's not slander, by the way, not slander against Duke or West Virginia when I say those things. What was the score last year with Iowa State, Kansas? They're that much worse in your words? I think they were up 38-0 at halftime last year. Okay, this is the direction.
All right, closing it out in the Big 12, we won't spend too much time on Texas 38, West Virginia 20. This is a game that was never close. Texas was up 28-0 in the second quarter before JT Daniels finally threw a touchdown pass for West Virginia. So Texas now headed into this game against Oklahoma next week, the big rivalry matchup. There is some talk that Quinn Ewers might be back for that game. We will obviously cover it more as the week progresses. So stay tuned here to the Solid Verbal for more
by the way,
information.
sending very strong positive thoughts to C.J. Donaldson, right? He was carted off in this one for West Virginia. So hopefully he is all right and everything is okay with him physically, emotionally, mentally, whatever, moving forward. But yeah, tough to see.
All right. Over in the SEC, a few results here that I will rattle through.
Please.
Alabama 49, Arkansas 26. Mississippi State 42. Texas A&M 24. God.
Yeah.
And LSU 21, Auburn 17. South Carolina also won by 40, I believe, on Thursday night, a game that was moved up due to Hurricane Ian.
Yeah.
Let's start with the Bama story. The Bama story was not so much that they won. It was that Bryce Young left in the second quarter with a sprained shoulder. He gave way to Jalen Milroe, who was a 4-star redshirt freshman. He was not great through the air, but had a huge 77-yard run. And speaking of loads when they run, he's a big dude.
Yeah, absolutely.
He's a big dude. He had the long run, which set up a touchdown in the fourth quarter. A monster game, sort of as predicted by Jahmyr Gibbs. But I do give credit to Arkansas because there was a moment in this game where it could have gotten out of hand and Arkansas fought back. Arkansas brought this one to within one score before Alabama zoomed out to a lead late and ended up winning this one comfortably, going away with the cover. But the Bryce Young storyline is something that we're going to have to watch now moving forward. It did not appear as if it was all that serious. But clearly when you've got any kind of shoulder sprain and a quarterback the likes of Bryce Young, who won the Heisman, who has proven to be very effective at going downfield, it's something that we need to watch. It is clearly something that we need to watch. Yeah.
Yeah, Arkansas gets the tiny fields touchdown, right? They had the fumble recovery. I think it was 3 yards out or something like that to pull it to 28-23. Raheem Sanders ran really well.
Yeah.
It just seemed at a certain point, Bryce Young is out. Jahmyr Gibbs, go win us this game comfortably. And he said, okay.
That was I can do that.
Yeah, he was ridiculous. Just ripping off the huge runs and living up to the expectations that he was rightfully saddled with as he made his way from Georgia Tech to Alabama. And yeah, an impressive win when it did get close and Alabama was quite literally able to run away with it.
The Mississippi State A&M game wasn't even close. And I saw this score and audibly gasped. Kate thought something was wrong. She's like, are you okay? A&M had 4 turnovers, 3 in the red zone. The offense wasn't great. Tell me if you've heard this before. Mississippi State also blocked a field goal attempt and ran it back 50 yards for a touchdown.
Yeah.
Here's what I love about this. When they asked Jimbo Fisher after the game about his offensive system, quote, the plays are there and we're there. When they asked him why is it not working, he says we're not executing. It may be more than not executing, Jimbo. Just a thought.
Yeah.
Just a thought. It may not all be player-based here.
I think that might be a way to look at this. Yes. Max Johnson struggled. He gets hurt. Haynes King comes in and struggles even more. It's feeling bad for Devin Achane and Evan Stewart. And Moose Muhammad made plays. He was really good. They have guys. I don't know that they have coaches. I don't know if they have coaches who can teach these plays to these players and how to string them together, because I'm positive if we Freaky Friday'd things with Mike Leach taking over the Texas A&M roster, they'd probably score a little bit more, right?
I was going to say, can Jimbo get in on that meeting with Kirk Ferentz and Paul Chryst?
Yeah, absolutely he can. Yeah, he's in like a roped off VIP section of the diner, but it's the same diner. Yeah, Mississippi State for their part defensively made plays, absolutely made plays. They were able to. This is not a team. This is another like quietly pickleball team, but you saw the big play later on in the game that opened things up for Mississippi State. I think it was a 75-yard like over the top catch. I think they're a good team. You know, I'm seduced by them every year, and to give you credit, you have not said you're all in on TCU or Ole Miss. I mean, you kind of did with Ole Miss.
I'm kind of in on Ole Miss.
You brought Taylor Swift into the mix with Ole Miss, but you didn't get too hot and bothered over TCU's surge against Oklahoma, which is to your credit. I am always going to be in on Mississippi State as just like an SEC danger. I just love the idea of the bells and Starkville and just things getting weird with State. So,
well, and you know what? That's fine because they look pretty good. And despite the fact that A&M has their own struggles on offense, it's still a good Mississippi State team. You know, for them to execute the way that they did, and win going away. This was not a close game. No. I thought that was impressive because it's really easy to play down in the SEC. Talk to Georgia.
Yeah, I think it was Billy Lucci, obviously who runs Texags, said something like Texas A&M had 4 trips inside the 10 and somehow got outscored 7-3 by Mississippi State because of the blocked field goal return. He's like, I've never seen that before. I'm not even angry. It's just crazy. I'm just impressed. Mississippi State. There it is. That's all.
I'm very curious to see how this narrative about Jimbo evolves because you have to imagine after all of the positive steam on A&M this offseason with the recruiting, these results are not good.
Right.
These results aren't good. I mean, there are losses now on the schedule. In front of them, there are games that I think at the start of the year we counted as wins that we certainly cannot at this juncture. And the fact that they have looked so anemic on offense, given all this talent, it's going to continue to be weird. And it's going to continue to be weird. And there are going to be more weird Jimbo pressers to follow here. So we have that to look forward to. Speaking of tension.
By the way, coming into the game, the 99th most efficient offense.
Not
coming
good.
into the game.
Not good.
Yeah.
LSU 21, Auburn 17.
Ugh.
If you look at this box score, you might say to yourself, how did LSU win this game? They were down 17-0 at one point in the second quarter. The answer is 4 turnovers and an offense that has scored just 6 second-half points in the last 3 games, your Auburn Tigers, Dan.
Yeah.
I will put aside for a moment the sheer comedy of you having to get your face painted as a Tiger and do it on camera. I am very excited for it. I finally feel like I got you on something.
Great.
Okay? I'm going to take that. We're going to move that to the side.
Okay.
Is it time here and now to record the postmortem for Brian Harsin? Because you know as well as I, we do these shows on a Sunday, and then we watch. We're almost afraid to refresh our browsers for fear of what might happen next. In this climate where coaches are very quick to go, and we're not rooting for that, it feels like the writing's on the wall here. It feels like whatever the answers are on the Auburn side, Brian Harsin, he ain't having them. And this is going to break before long. So, shall we just preface all of our coverage on this game around the fact that we believe Brian Harsin may be the next man out?
I think it's not an unreasonable take. I also want to give a little bit of credit to Gus Malzahn for his ability to navigate this world for as long as he did. And to succeed and to recruit and to win like he was able to do and beat Alabama in ways that people are not able to do all that often, if ever. So, yeah, it's there's almost like an element of you don't want to be the guy after the guy. And not that Gus Malzahn was infallible and perfect and didn't deserve to be let go and have him move on the way or in the manner he did. But I think it's the writing sort of on the wall with Brian Harsin. And that's not a controversial take. It's a tough place. It's a tough place when you're surrounded, when your rivals, plural, are Georgia and Alabama.
Yeah.
There's just going to be expectations to compete with your rivals that it's Auburn. It's a national championship. They've been to 2 national championships in the last dozen years or something like that. Won one of them. So the expectations are fine, but also it's a tough place. It is just a tough place. And with the quarterback room as thin as it has become, with the defense not having the talent anywhere that they've had these past few years, it seems, with the changes on the coaching staff, hiring an offensive coordinator, he resigns, Derek Mason takes a pay cut to go to Oklahoma State. Like, all of these things add up to it's only going to be for so long. It's only going to be for so long. So the postmortem is probably due and coming.
So if you are listening to this either early via our early access for Verballers at verballers.com, or if you're listening to this at some point on a Monday, if the news comes down about Brian Harsin, we're not doing an emergency pod. You've been warned.
You've been warned.
You've been warned.
This game specifically, Auburn looked really good right away.
They did. Robbie Ashford balled out.
Yeah. LSU gets one of their touchdowns on a long fumble return. Is that correct? So it was Garrett Nussmeier's not the guy. I don't think. Doesn't look like it right now. He just looked kind of nervous and was throwing it all over the place when he came in with Jaden Daniels beat up. Jaden Daniels, is occasionally the guy, but looks lost sometimes and is unable to make plays at times. And watching this game, I couldn't help but wonder, is that like a Sex and the City voiceover? I couldn't help but wonder, what's Miles Brennan up to? Is he staying in shape? Is he willing to reconsider? Yeah. But win your clunkers, 21-17. I really thought LSU, when they got the ball back before their own fumble, which is offensive ineptitude, I thought, I was like, all right, we're going to cruise to 28-17. It won't be pretty, but Ty's going to have to paint his face like a tiger. And they just choked it away.
I was sweating bullets down the stretch because they could have covered here too.
Yep.
They could have covered.
Totally.
21-17 LSU gets the dub. By the way, hope Seven Banks is okay. He had a scary neck injury on the opening kickoff. Yeah, had to be stretchered off. So we hope he's okay. Florida and Eastern Washington are playing at some point today, Sunday, as we record this. Florida favored by 31.5 points. So we'll report back on that game when we put out the Wednesday podcast. We do have a couple other conferences that we need to zoom through here. And provide the necessary context. Let's go on over to the ACC. A couple results to report. Georgia Tech 26, Pitt 21. We had Wake Forest 31-21 over Florida State. Good game. North Carolina 41-10, over Virginia Tech. Boston College winning on a late field goal over Louisville 34-33. Duke runs for nearly 250 yards and knocks off Virginia by 21 points, 38-17. And Syracuse won 59-zip over Wagner. The stats in this game were eye-popping. Most eye-popping, of course, is when they agree to play 10-minute quarters in the second half. That's how you know it's a game that's out of hand. Syracuse led 49-0 at halftime. So, of those games, Dan, give me a couple reactions.
North Carolina played defense, thanks to Virginia Tech on the other side of the field, playing offense, attempting to play offense. So a nice win for North Carolina. I'm still not high on the heels at all long term under Mac Brown. Good to see Duke, by the way, almost assuredly going to a bowl in year one of the Mike Elko era. Especially on offense, they do a really, really impressive job considering the depths to which this offense fell these past couple years. So, Robert and I must have been awesome for Virginia because of what he's doing at Syracuse some of the time, a lot of the time, and what Virginia isn't doing on offense without him, and with Brennan Armstrong, with Keaton Thompson, with a lot of Dontavian Wicks. A lot of these guys had a lot of success last year. Louisville and Scott Satterfield. I don't know how long this is going to be because Boston College is not especially good. But with Louisville's defense on the other side of the field, suddenly they could run the ball, they could throw the ball downfield. Now, Zay Flowers is one of the best 6'8", whatever receivers in the country, if not one of the best 3 or 4.
You see that touchdown catch?
Double coverage meant nothing on that catch. It was a suggestion from 2 DBs that maybe you don't catch the ball, but Zay Flowers said, I think I'm going to.
Yeah.
I just think I'm gonna catch this ridiculous this catch. Okay, so that stood out to me, that Louisville is just not going to be a thing under Scott Satterfield. It seems they've started out their ACC schedule 0-3.
Wow.
If you were going to build, if you were on a recipe site for how to beat Pitt without showing anything through the air, Like if you were to go to Smitten Kitchen or if you were to watch a Nigella Lawson video about the ingredients necessary to build this wonderful win souffle against Pitt, fumbles, out of nowhere, long runs, turnovers upon turnovers, mistakes. Pitt was like totally, completely. I only watched a little bit of this game. They were really bad on third down, were they not?
Very bad.
Yeah, Pitt, 2 of 12 on third down.
Very, very
the penalties, 12 penalties for 75 yards. I thought Pitt was basically going to throw out a bad half and get their act together and just go straight at Georgia Tech because that's kind of all you need to do. And yet, Ramblin' Wreck.
Jeff Sims threw for 108 yards in this game. And honestly, it was the Tech defense played pretty well. You know, I mean, it could have. There was definitely some bit that you have to attribute to bad weather, right? But that wasn't the reason that Pitt lost this game. Pitt lost this game because
weather was the same for both teams.
Yeah, weather was the same for both teams. Pitt lost this game because they just could not get their act together at all until like the last 2 drives of the game. Honestly, on offense, the Tech defense played pretty well. They forced a couple turnovers. Like for a team that lost Jeff Collins a week ago, to get their act together in the manner that they did. Shout out Brent Key, the interim coach who was promoted, I think, from line coach, who apparently didn't know what to do after the game, like if he's supposed to do a press conference or what. Like, he was new to this thing too. For them to pull their act together the way they did to knock off Pitt, well, really impressive. And kudos to Georgia Tech because it's already been a really tough season for them. But this is a nice win to knock off a ranked Pitt team.
How many punts into this game, if you're in the stadium, are you just starting to answer work emails? How, like, here, I can do it, Ty. I'm ready to if you'd like me to. Field goal, punt, 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 downs, field goal, touchdown, punt, end of half. Fumble, field goal, punt, punt, interception, field goal, fumble, touchdown, punt, downs, and here it is. Touchdown, touchdown, touchdown. But also end of game.
Brutal. Just brutal. Brutal.
Punt,
I thought you were going to
punt,
say
punt.
how many punts into the game before you leave. In a rainy night, a cold night, it was
tough.
brutal up here. It was not nice.
It was a Rodrigo game. You're right.
All right. Wake Forest 31, Florida State 21. Real quick on this one. Florida State had a really nice 83-yard touchdown drive to open the game.
Yeah.
And then had trouble getting it together until later in the game. Wake was up 21-7 at half. Florida State, of course, was without some guys along both lines, and it definitely had an impact. I mean, they had trouble stopping. They had trouble creating pressure, and Wake really took advantage of that advantage on the ground, and they were able to run the ball effectively. It was Florida State's first loss of the season, and it'll be, I think, interesting to me now to see where they go next because they've got NC State next week. Both teams maybe licking their wounds a little bit as a result of Week 5. So we'll see what the Noles can do on the road. That'll be another tough match for them. Where
Are you going to play your Taylor Swift 10 and 2 song for them?
No.
Oh, not? You're done?
No, you know what? It I don't know where the button went.
That's a tough beat.
It disappeared. Yeah.
Can we also say that Wake Forest is full on good?
Wake Forest is full on
the
good.
story doesn't have to only be Florida State was beat up, Florida State allowed way too much, Wake Forest was able to get after Jordan Travis a little bit too much. And Jordan Travis was fine in this game. He spread the ball out. They ran the ball not all that well, but Jordan Travis there's a lot of can this guy win it all by himself? To what Jordan Travis seems to be expected of him a little bit too much, perhaps.
Oh, yeah.
And yes, you're right about the beat up. But also, once again, Wake Forest, full on good. It's a full on good team in a letdown spot after the Clemson game for sure. Full on good team.
I am jealous of Sam Hartman's beard.
It's a good one.
If I grew a beard, I would want it to look like Sam Hartman's. He's got the deep jet black, almost Al Borland level beard going on, which I think is aggressive as a college kid.
Yeah.
I can't imagine having that kind of beard in college. But the discipline it takes to keep that thing looking as groomed as it does, that's a guy with attention to detail.
I'm seeing your 5 o'clock shadow. I think you could grow a robust mustache.
I could go. Yeah, I could.
So, I mean, that's in the direction.
I just, to have that stick-to-itiveness as a college kid and the discipline to grow that thing out to look as healthy as it does. Yeah.
By the way, speaking of which, I could watch that State Farm commercial where the guy deeply smells his own beard. I could watch that less.
Yeah.
I could watch that fewer times over the course of a Saturday. That's all.
Yeah. We are a Geico show, after all.
That's true.
All right. Big Ten, Purdue 20.
Yeah.
Minnesota 10. Okay. We had Illinois 34. Wisconsin 10. Okay.
Yeah.
Maryland 27. Michigan State 13. Penn State 17. Northwestern 7. Nebraska 35. Indiana 21. And Ohio State 49-10. I believe Ohio State faked to punt up 39. Something of that ilk. Interesting move. Okay. A lot to unpack, actually.
Okay.
On the Big Ten side of things here. The Purdue one for me was a big surprise. I know it was for you as well. You locked up Minnesota in this one. Mo Ibrahim did not play. Looked like he did something to his ankle last week against Michigan State. Excuse me, I almost said Mississippi State. But he did practice this week. He dressed for the game, so I don't know if something happened or warm-ups or what, but Minnesota really struggled without him. Just 47 rushing yards and 27 carries. Tanner Morgan, who is otherwise, as we've alluded on this show many times over, pretty solid, threw 3 picks in this game. Minnesota could not get its offense together. This was a weird defensive matchup. Aiden O'Connell was back, also threw 2 picks on the Purdue side. So not really a great game to watch, but in the end, Purdue gets the dub by 10 over Minnesota. I do think the bigger story on the Big Ten side is what happened to Wisconsin.
Yeah.
I don't mean to undermine Purdue beating a ranked team.
Yeah.
Okay, nice win for Purdue. But Brett Bielema going back to Madison, winning by 24.
Mm-hmm.
A game in which Wisconsin, I believe, finished with 2 total rushing yards.
Yeah.
This is a problem, right? Like, this is a really big problem for Paul Chryst. And
I'd say that's true. Yeah.
You factor in that they if Wisconsin can't run, and then on top of it, they've got 10 penalties and 3 turnovers.
Mm-hmm.
What is this team? What is happening to this team? If you can't run and you're that mistake prone, there's a lot on the schedule that could jump up and get you the rest of the way.
By the way, 2 quarterbacks, Tommy DeVito and Graham Mertz, where in 4 years, I will come up for air on a Sunday and be like, wait a minute, Tommy DeVito starting for the Texans? I'm sorry, is Graham Mertz making the start for the Seahawks? Is this where the NFL is? Because that happens to me as well. We're like, they couldn't find anybody else? Nobody else answered their phone.
Right.
One, Chase Brown is really, really good.
Yeah, nice
and it's
game.
a really strong running back conference overall right now in the Big Ten. When you look at Blake Corum, when you look at Chase Brown, when you look at, now we can talk about Mayan Williams and whatever's happening in the Ohio State backfield because he's ridiculous. Mo Ibrahim and the sort of absence felt from Minnesota when he was gone. It's just a strong running backs conference at the moment. We'll see what happens. And it's weird to not include Braylon Allen or somebody from Wisconsin in that conversation, but it's the accurate way to go about business. And maybe Penn State gets into that conversation at a certain point. But I really like the running backs at the top. Illinois, the story to me was the defense. You mentioned that Wisconsin was unable to run the ball. A lot of teams know what's coming against Wisconsin, good, bad, whatever. Usually they're able to just do something on offense on the ground. Illinois' defense is so well coached and they play so hard. I came away impressed. The ability to run the ball, play defense. Brett Bielema going to Madison, in an emotional spot, obviously, for him and his family or whoever. Illinois is a good team. What are they, 4-1 now?
Yep. Yeah.
And
now they're, like I said before this game, I mean, we both were on Illinois plus the 7.5.
Yeah.
Whatever the line was. And they profiled as a team that is still a fair amount inconsistent, but pesky as hell. A pain in the ass. And they will fight you tooth and nail. And in this one, I mean, they clearly got the better of Wisconsin, winning by 24 on the road. Incredible.
The Minnesota one, I don't have a lot of extended thoughts on. Purdue being able to run the ball. Aiden O'Connell just being in there, coming back from, I think it was, we talked about this, the rib injury he sustained. And I think Minnesota's going to win a bunch of games. They didn't play anybody in September, like they always don't. And they beat a Michigan State team. And I don't know if there's some sort of title we want to figure out for either Michigan State or Nebraska, where you think a team is pretty good because they beat Michigan State and then it doesn't mean it. Is that the Tuck rule from Mel Tucker? I apologize. The Tuck rule. Beating Michigan State doesn't mean you're good. It just means you're a team.
Yeah.
So,
well,
sorry, Maryland.
Maryland beat Michigan State. They were favored. That was a weird point spread that kept going up. And when we did the preview, I said to you, I'm not buying Maryland minus whatever.
Sure.
This 8.5, whatever it closed at. And then the Terps come out in those really cool red uniforms. Oh, they were so cool.
The throwback. Yeah, the clean. I think it's Under Armour given their history. But yeah, looked great.
And then Maryland, not known for defense, shut out Michigan State in the second half. And that was the ball game, 27-13.
Yeah. So Maryland feisty.
Yeah.
They might not be great, but they've improved over the course of the year. They beat who they're supposed to beat, it seems. And on to live another day. Get to another bowl game. That'd be a nice win, a nice step forward, and nice to see Talia have another good game. Rakim Jarrett back in the lineup.
Yeah.
Just after getting hit and leaving the game the previous week against Michigan. I don't know. You want to talk about Northwestern getting 44 turnovers and turning it into no points?
Yeah. The weather up this way was lousy, but lousy for both teams. Just like a cold, steady, just the remnants of Hurricane Ian is what it was. 8 turnovers in this game, 5 for Penn State, 4 which were fumbles. And Northwestern couldn't do much with it. So at one point I sent a message to you. I'm like, are we going to see Drew Aller? Because Penn State offensively could not get anything going. This is a weird game typically. And I know some folks in our Discord and even some folks who listened on the Spotify show on Thursday were calling it out. Penn State's favored by 25, some really high number. Do not bet Penn State. Do not bet Penn State. And I wish I would have called that out because I felt similarly. But this was the clunker. Penn State now. Penn State starting to think bigger about things. It's not a finished product. Not by any stretch of the imagination. I still don't know what's going on with their rushing attack. It's clear that they have talent. It's clear that they are better. It is not clear to me who they view as their number one running back. They are pretty content at the moment to do the timeshare thing.
Mm-hmm.
Almost sticking to a script with it, which is very strange. Very strange. But nonetheless, they've got talent. I think as we get a little bit deeper into this thing, a couple weeks, we're going to talk about Penn State, Michigan, which is going to be a fascinating matchup on about 1,000 different levels. So they got to play better than this, but they always have clunkers against Northwestern. I'm not going to read too deeply into it.
Northwestern just good enough to lose respectively to most teams.
That's right. That's right. The only other thing that I'll call out quick, and I know you mentioned Mine Williams. He came in after Trey Henderson was a bit of a scratch, but 5 touchdowns, 189 yards. This was like a 39-point win that still sort of felt like a clunker for Ohio State. Rutgers
they had some red
offense,
zone struggles. They're beat up. Yep.
Yeah, the Rutgers offense wasn't all that bad in this game. They just couldn't get enough points on the board, obviously. The Nebraska game, 35-21, 23 penalties for a combined 203 yards. So Nebraska's still inconsistent, and that's been the case for the last couple of years. But they get a win here. I really like Anthony Grant. I don't know. Just give him the ball. Give him the ball the rest of the season. We'll see how things end up.
Nebraska on their own drive for 6.
Yeah.
With the win over North Dakota. And now they have Rutgers, Purdue. We'll see. I mean, Purdue's on the road. That's going to be a tough one. Illinois is going to be a tough one. Minnesota, we'll see. I don't know. If they could get to 5 wins, that'd be pretty impressive. I don't know if they will. But they're on their own drive. They're on their drive. Nothing to add on Penn State. Looking forward to Joe Moorhead returning in 2026. I don't know. That just seems like it's going to be
Matt
life
Rule.
cycle.
No, it's going to be Matt Rule. Matt Rule will be the next coach at Penn State.
No, I'm saying he'll be an offensive coordinator back at Penn State.
For Matt Rule, sure.
For Matt Rule, for James Franklin, whoever. 2026, 2025, somewhere in there. Elsewhere, I don't think I have anything to add about the Ohio State game. Down game for the passing game. No Jackson Smith and Jigba. But yeah, Rutgers is going to ugly things up. Some tension between Ryan Day and Greg Schiano.
Oh yeah, they're pointing at each other, jawing back and forth.
Yeah, otherwise, Illinois is your team of the day to me within the conference. I guess Illinois and Michigan.
Let's go over to the Pac-12. Let's talk about the Pac-12. So UCLA knocked off Washington on Friday night by a 40-32 score. UCLA led this one 26-10 at half. They added 14 more in the third quarter. There was a brief moment in the fourth quarter when I wondered if Washington could complete the comeback, but it was not meant to be. Ultimately, this is a game that I think will go down as looking closer than it was. Washington could not stop UCLA's offense. Like, not at all. Zach Charbonnet ran at will. Guys were wide open down the field. You talk about OU and the scout team. Washington had a little bit of that scout team defense thing going on here.
Cover Jake Bobo. Somebody
cover Jake Bobo, the transfer from Duke. DTR had a monster game, a sweet juke at the goal line on the touchdown run. I'm sure you saw that highlight.
Yeah.
So a really good showing here by the UCLA offense. Washington really had no answer. Michael Penix again showed flashes, but also showed flashes of those mistakes that tend to creep into his game from time to time. He had a pair of interceptions in this one. So I thought a good showing from UCLA here to knock off a Washington team that was top 15 in the last poll. So UCLA is a team now we're going to have to start talking about because they're undefeated. If you look ahead across the Pac-12, this is like, all right, where does UCLA rank amid all of this, Dan?
It's a good question. I think they're danger. I think they're absolutely dangerous with that backfield. Look, if you look at this specific matchup, if I'm telling you that there's a quarterback involved who sometimes looks incredible and sometimes full-on disappears or makes questionable decisions in big moments, who am I talking about? Right? Like, there is something to DTR and Michael Penix and like the Spider-Man meme pointing back and forth at each other. This is one of the few games I got right this weekend because Washington hadn't been on the road, and UCLA always does something like this to a decent team anyway in the Rose Bowl. And so, yeah, it was a really well-called game on offense and took advantage of the turnovers. And I still think Washington is much improved. I just don't think they have the dudes specifically on defense yet to go on the road and come out of this with a one clunker.
Yeah, the answer, by the way, to where does UCLA rank in all this is we're going to find out next week because UCLA hosts Utah.
Yeah.
It may be the game of the week outside of TCU, Kansas, of course. Utah, for their part, 42-16 over Oregon State. Oregon State threw 2 picks on their first 3 drives, one of which Utah cashed in for a touchdown, the other of which was a pick 6. 3 interceptions in this game for Clark Phillips III.
Ridiculous. The corner, to be clear, the corner for Utah, the All-American caliber corner. Yeah.
Sounds like a county commissioner. Sounds like a very successful doctor. Sounds like he could really be anything he wants to with a name like Clark Phillips.
Oh, there was somebody. Oh, Dr. Richard Reese, DDS. Yeah, that's for Baylor. That's who I thought of for that. But yeah, Clark Phillips, maybe a somewhat problematic owner of a cable company.
Could see it.
Yeah.
Maybe owns an oil derrick or 2 in the great state of Texas.
I could see that, absolutely. The only thing I have to say about this Utah game, and Utah did a nice job taking care of business, is you really thought Tavian Thomas or Micah Bernard or whoever that they were going to run all over Oregon State. That wasn't the case at all.
It wasn't.
Oregon State's defense, especially up front against the run, actually made a good amount of plays. Tavian Thomas didn't do anything. It was like, I don't know how many carries they had, but it was not a factor. It was mostly Cam Rising just consistently making plays. Not a ton downfield, but that's not the Utah offense, especially without Brant Keithy, who's out for the year. Really nice win for Utah and sets up a couple of pretty big matchups in the next coming weeks, right? They have Utah and UCLA consecutively, right?
Yeah. So elsewhere in the Pac-12, to round this story out, USC wins by 17 over Arizona State, despite the fact that it was close at half, 21-17, but then USC pulled away. They're at Utah in 2 weeks. Oregon won 45-27, barely covering the point spread. Good heavens.
They pulled all their starters in the third quarter, but yeah.
We had Oregon running for 351 and 4 touchdowns, led by one Bo Nix, your boy.
Yeah.
Washington State won by 19 over Cal, 3 touchdown passes for Cam Ward. And Arizona gets the dub over Colorado 43-20. Jaden DeLaura throws for 484 and 6 touchdowns. The 6 touchdowns, by the way, ties a school record. Jacob Cowing, the transfer, I believe, from UTEP, right?
Yes.
12 catches, 180 yards, and a touchdown.
Yeah,
So,
he went to, I think, 3,000 for his career. Yeah.
Crazy. So the rest of the Pac-12 kind of sorting itself out as expected, but things are going to start coming to a head here pretty quickly as we've got some of these teams pairing off against each other.
Yeah, the Oregon game was interesting. They were able to run all over. They probably should have dropped. What did they have at the half? They had a ton of points at the half. They probably should have had 2 more touchdowns, but they could not get out of their own way penalty-wise. I think they had 10 penalties or something in the first half. A lot of procedural stuff, a lot of offensive line issues that they're going to need to clean up before the schedule gets more difficult. Bo Nix, for his part, I mean, he had like an 80-yard touchdown run. That was great. Threw into double coverage a couple of times deep, which I didn't love.
That's the Bo Nix experience, though. That's the Bo Nix way.
Here's the thing, though. And I think Stanford does have a couple of good DBs. I'd much rather a quarterback, maybe not to double coverage, but heave a ball up to his best receiver in advantageous situations with a lead or whatever. Like, go make a play. But Bo Nix underthrew those, and those were both very pickable balls that I remember seeing. So that will be cleaned up, and the intermediate pass game needs to sort of take another step forward, but they stomped Stanford on the ground. They got whatever they wanted. And so I don't know. I mean, Stanford is now, 1-9 in their last 10 games since beating Oregon last year, with the one, I think, being the Colgate win. Like, Stanford they're bad.
Yeah.
And between Stanford and Cal, there's not a lot to love in the Bay Area football-wise right now. And Oregon's schedule is going to get harder, but I thought the defense played well. They were without a starting linebacker. Their corners played well. But again, it's Stanford. I don't know. The pass rush got better for Oregon. Wazoo getting the win that they got was great. And I like watching Cam Ward. I mean, he's good. I don't think he's great, but he's fun. Cal was not good.
No.
Cal's not good at playing offense in a college football way.
No.
Otherwise, I don't have much to add. Colorado's very bad as well, and Arizona's fun. And that's your Pac-12.
Well, looking ahead to next week, some interesting matchups here on the horizon.
Yeah.
Texas, Oklahoma, obviously the big rivalry game, but TCU, Kansas, which we mentioned before. Fun contest. Utah, UCLA, Dan.
Yep.
We've also got Texas Tech against Oklahoma State, Kansas State, Iowa State, and Farmageddon. Texas A&M, what could have been on the road at Alabama. The aforementioned Wazoo Cougars on the road at USC. Be interesting to see what their defense does. Iowa at Illinois. Kind of interesting on a couple different levels.
Yep.
So not a completely loaded slate like we've seen before, but so many points of intrigue that we're going to go through as we do our Week 6 preview. I guess a day or so ahead of our live show in New York City, baby.
Yeah, buddy.
Come on out. College Football, the game show. SolidVerbalLive.com, SmellTiesHair.com. Tickets still available, though we've moved a great number of them as this thing has gotten closer. We're very excited about this show. So come on out. If you're going to be in the area, Chelsea Music Hall, adjacent to Chelsea Market, I believe you told me.
I think it's right there within the market, yeah.
Yeah, so come on out.
Cool venue. Yeah, great show. Great food right there. Otherwise, by the way, I didn't mention the USC game. Close at the half. The ASU pass rush in conjunction with the USC offensive line. Getting it done. Caleb Williams, athletic enough to escape and make plays. The receivers for USC were ridiculous, but I'm still not sold on the USC defense, and that's okay. They won their game, and they did so eventually comfortably, but it was something like 21-17. I actually like the USC freshman running back a good deal. I think it's Raleek Brown, I want to say.
Yeah.
Elsewhere, just in the sport itself, because it was all over the place, BYU, the old wagon wheel, going to Provo.
That's right.
They take down Utah State after a somewhat slow start. They did play well. Tulane, no Michael Pratt, gets it done against Houston. Weird year for Houston. But Tulane, I guess the Kansas State win looks better and the loss looks better for K-State, maybe. Middle Tennessee in a letdown spot after beating Miami. Still, the offense was all over in this game. And Frank Harris, by the way, did everything good and bad for UTSA. He checked every box. Boise State scored a bunch of points after not scoring a bunch of points and hiring Dirk Cutter to run their offense. They take down San Diego State, who could not throw the ball. Like, I don't even know if the ball left anybody's hands. They threw it so poorly. And they fire, Brady Hoke fires his offensive coordinator. Elsewhere in the sport, especially at the G5 level, Georgia State gets in the win column with a comfortable win against Army. Air Force gets a nice notch in their Commander-in-Chief's trophy race by beating Navy in a weird, like, nobody's scoring a bunch of points kind of way, but they get a field goal at the end of the game. Memphis takes down Temple comfortably. James Madison tie.
40-30 over Texas State.
JMU.
Staying unbeaten. I saw Coastal also remaining
last
unbeaten.
second.
Yep. One of 16 teams in FBS that is unbeaten, Coastal Carolina and JMU, both in the Sun Belt.
Yep.
Cincinnati won by 10 over Tulsa. That was a game that we were interested in. And Troy, this was an interesting wrinkle. Troy beats Western Kentucky. This is after Jarrett Deggy started the year with Western Kentucky, transferred over to Troy, and then threw two touchdown passes against his former team.
Louisiana's not having a nice year.
No.
Whatever you want to call them. Louisiana.
No.
Yeah, they go down to the Jags, who are actually pretty good, I think. You know, we saw them come within a weird botched fake field goal of beating UCLA, so South Alabama moves to 4-1. Liberty with a nice-ish win over ODU. UTEP over Charlotte, who, by the way, is 1-5 right now. I don't know what the future holds for Will Healy and Charlotte, but UTEP, a nice bounce back there. I mean, they just beat Boise State, so they continue to bounce back after a weird start. By the way, the Coastal, the Myrtle Hurdle. I don't know if you saw that play.
Great.
Really fun. Arkansas State to 2 wins. Not something.
Did you want to mention Rice
expected.
real quick?
Dude, Rice is 3-2, and they've beaten both Louisiana and UAB, and we're right there with Houston.
Yeah.
After me saying in the offseason, I don't know why Rice football exists. Some feistiness under
Bulletin
Mike
board
Bloomgren.
material. I'd like to know if that's hanging somewhere.
FIU won a real-life football game. They beat New Mexico State. So Mike McIntyre with FIU getting to 2-2. I guess that's something. Wyoming goes down to a very quiet 3-1 San Jose State.
Give me some dude alerts, Stan.
Whoa.
Dude alerts
Jahmyr
for week
Gibbs.
5.
What's the Mizzou kicker's name? Is Harrison Mevis?
Oh, man. He could play offensive line
Absolute
for at
boot.
least 60% of the G5 teams out there.
Yes, he could.
What a bull.
Kent State had both a running back and wide receiver go over 200 yards after their ridiculous start to their season playing Oklahoma, Washington, and Georgia last week. So that is Marquez Cooper going for 240 on the ground and Dante Cephas 246 through the air. A duo of dudes. Monterey. Baldwin for Baylor. Receiver goes for $174. You mentioned Jacob Cowing. Deuce Vaughn got it done once again, but he's sort of a retired dude at this point. Drake May absolutely laying the lumber.
Drake May, by the way, I told you this. He's the best 2-syllable quarterback in college football this year.
Is that true?
It's
better than Bo Nix?
He's better than Bo Nix. Yeah,
probably.
I spent 15 minutes this morning at 5 a.m. trying to go through all the 1-syllable quarterbacks, and I think Drake May is the guy.
I like that you're not wasting your time with frivolous, weird, silly things. I like that
It's
you're
what we do.
focusing.
It's what we do.
And really zeroing in on the important stuff. So, yeah, I think that's all I have. There were great performances around the sport, but I wanted to highlight the wonderful Kent State performances. Why not?
Beautiful. Well, thank you to one and all for bearing with us. Longer show, but a lot to discuss here. We appreciate it. Your support, as always, is...
Oh, we have, by the way, UConn beat Fresno.
Oh,
Sorry,
UConn beat Fresno.
Shay in
that's
our
right.
comments said we forgot to mention Fresno fan.
How dare we? How dare we?
UConn 24-point dogs.
Yeah.
Take down the Fresno State dogs.
Shay, a bit of a glutton for punishment as a Fresno State
true.
fan.
Yeah.
Just wants to make sure that that loss is on the record. That's how you know you're a bitter fan. I appreciate it. Believe me.
Second Jeff Tedford era. A couple speed bumps early.
Yeah. Couple speed bumps. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you again to everybody for bearing with us. SolidVerbalLive.com is where you can go if you want to buy tickets for the New York live show. Again, it's Friday. We're playing a game show. It's going to be a ton of fun.
Yes.
We have to work on planning that content this week, but I'm excited.
Oh, my God. We got a bunch sketched out. We got to get specifics.
We got this.
We're so pumped. SolidVerbalLive.com this coming Friday, October 7th. Chelsea Music Hall, New York City.
Verballers.com is where you go to get access to this show a little bit early. Also access to the aforementioned Discord and to the Verballer Top 10 poll if you are ever so inclined to vote next Sunday morning. Last but certainly not least, subscribe to the show if you have not done so. If you made it this far, if you're new here, we appreciate you bearing with us one more time. SolidVerbal.com is the website, Dan.
I have nothing else to add to this program.
For that guy over there, my good friend Dan Rubenstein, soon to be a Tiger. For myself, Ty Hildenbrand, thanks again for downloading, listening, playing along at home. We will be back on Wednesday. In the meantime, stay solid.
Peace.